my guns.
Yep.
Another physical fitness. I'm getting back into it.
And welcome back to Swandingo Files. Here today is Mike Damon, another fellow veteran who's crushing on the outside. How's it going today, Mike?
Outstanding. Absolutely amazing.
Well, today we're going to talk about why you joined the military. I know you're in the Marines first, so we won't hold that against you too much. Then we'll talk about what you did in the military, your transition out, and how you're crushing it today and making all your money. So, you want to begin? So why did you join the military?
I joined out of a whim. I was taking my second stab at 12th grade, and I said, "What am I going to do for the next 4 years, or 6 years, or 8 years?" I had no future, I had no plans, and the recruiter dropped the phone. He says, "Hi, blah blah," gives me the speech for the United States Marine Corps. I'm sorry, so. And all of a sudden he goes, "Well, think you want to come to my office?" And he's trying to, get in the speech real quick. And I said, "Yeah, sure, that's good." And he goes, "What?" And so I said, "Hey, if I'm going to join," I'd already had a brochure in front of me. I had my stepfather and my father were great guys. They were great men that taught me how to be a man. And I said, I'm not really a man unless I got some goals or something I need to do. I need to accomplish something. And I wasn't going to go to college. I wanted to go in the air traffic control because I heard they made a lot of money. There was no reason. And I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll join." And they dropped the phone. It was pretty funny. My life was full of just funny stuff, man. And I joined the Marine Corps on a whim. I said, if I got 4 years and I got to waste it, I got nothing going on. I said, I'll try to be the best. Being kind of a wimpy guy, shy, zits on my face. I said, I'll try to be a Marine, see what happens.
I think that's about how most kids end up joining the military. Zits on their face, wimpy guys, and all that fun stuff. But yeah,
fat, disgusting civilian.
No,
Yeah.
I was super skinny, and I joined at only 120 something, 120 pounds, somewhere around there. By the time I was out, I was like almost 170. By the time I did my 16 weeks of OSET training in the Army, so all muscle, no fat. So that was back in the day, though. That was back in the real military. Today's military, I don't even want to talk about that yet.
But, hey, it's a pendulum. We're looking back on it and say it's not so good, but this experiment with inclusive this and that and all that, it's not going to work out well. It's already
not working out well. I don't know what.
Well, they realize it. Guys on girl swim teams, it's not working out well. Even the people that are liberals are going, "Hey, this is not working out for us." I said, "Well, you wanted it," and I laugh at them. But there's no sense getting some guys. The commentators will scream from the highest rooftop. I'm just looking back, watching the train wreck, smiling, while they're all fighting themselves, cleaning up.
Well, I'm worried though that we're gonna have a huge mental health issue here in about 10 years, like even worse what we have now. And that's the problem, is all these kids and young adults that are wanting these transitions and all this stuff now, or they're gonna turn around in 10 to 15 years and be like, maybe this was the wrong thing for me, which is starting now, that it was the wrong thing. But 10 to 15 years, we're gonna be screwed.
Well, my friend was saying, "Hey, pump the brakes. I mean, we're 50 years old, and like I'm already adjusting real quick. Society's changing. Can we just slow it down a little bit?" And slowing it down is a conservative thing, just to think change. But to get back on topic and I went in the Marine Corps and I was in the reserves, and it was in the early 90s, and it was 1990, 89, 90, and there was no jobs. For an unskilled worker, there was no jobs. So I was in the reserves, and I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. And I don't know what exactly I did. I got to be a patriot. I grew up in a small town where, they had like 6 parades a year. What it was a suburb of Boston. And what happened is there was a great migration after World War II, my grandfather and grandmother being one of them, where they used their VA GI Bill, and they bought houses in outskirts of Boston. And the whole town was just full of these old vets. And I thought every town was like that. And we had jets flying over our head all the time because we were right next to a base.
Nice.
Yeah. And so what I did is I put in a packet to go on active duty. And I also read somewhere back then, I read the book, The Road Less Traveled. And it says in there that 80% of people die within 20 miles of their birthplace. And I said, that's not going to be me. I'm not going to do that. Do something. So I put in for Japan. I always had a curiosity for Japan, but I didn't get it. You know, you put your request in, and I got Hawaii. I was bummed out, man. So
Bummed out about Hawaii. That's, I mean,
kidding. It was, you know, pinch me. Like my whole life is like pinch me. You know what I mean? Whoever thought a dyslexic high school dropout would join the military and write a book in his 50s? Come on. And now on his way to financial independence while being disabled. I mean, there's no excuses in my book. I'm disabled. I collect Social Security, and I'm building a empire, and I want to share it with everybody. And how I recovered from trauma. So I was in the Marines, and luckily, I went for a flight when I was in the reserves on a Huey. I was out there. I had great opportunities, and one of my son says he's like me. He said we're very curious. So out there, and I love aircraft. Little kid, like every guy does. I want to be an astronaut, you know, of course. I didn't want to be a fireman. And that's closest to when I was out there looking at the birds, didn't know if I could close. I said, you want to go for a ride? I said, hell yeah. And I flew right through downtown Boston. That was before 9/11, obviously. We flew like in between the towers. And I said, I'm hooked. How do I get to flying these things? Then I joined active duty. I got another helicopter unit because the job I had was an admin job, but I could have been with any type of unit. It just lined up for me. I stood out on that flight line like I was a kid for years until one guy said, come on, I'll let you play on my plane, crew chief. And I was in the Marine Corps, and I eventually got to fly. I got my wings.
really?
Yeah. And wait till I tell you about what's coming up with that. Life comes full circle sometimes if you do the right thing. I'm going back on flight status as a crew chief on a military helicopter. Man, yeah, and then I have to pinch myself again. I got goosebumps thinking about it, and we'll go back to the story in a second. I got goosebumps thinking about it, and to think that 10 years ago I was going to take my own life because I thought it was that bad. It's not that bad. I just needed people to help me. I needed to say I need help first, and that was the first step, and I got it. But what happened rewind back to the Marine Corps. It's before I was flying. I was at Subic Bay on a Westpac. Westpac, Army guys don't know, is most Marine Corps rotate things and go on 6-month deployments. Army's usually a year. You go to Korea or Germany. But in Marine Corps, they do 6 months. But their main thing is quick insertion. So it's like you move everything onto the boat with the helicopters, and then you go. And we floated around Japan, Korea. We did all those stops. And we were at Subic Bay, the Philippines, and a volcano exploded over us. And no one really, fathomed, you see it on TV or whatever, but no one did anything. And we went out in town, and 15,000 people died that day. Like somebody blew a bomb off. And if anyone Googles it, just look Mount Pinatubo and see what it was like. You got that lush jungle that we've all seen, which unless you've experienced a jungle, you don't know how thick that is. To see it all down like knee high, destroyed. Baboons running around. It was absolute total chaos. And I saw some things, and I didn't know how badly they had affected me until I was in my 40s. And I went along, and then I got out of the Marine Corps. This is the first time I was homeless. I got out of the Marine Corps. I stayed in Hawaii, and I had my own car. And I was riding around with another buddy in the Marine Corps that got out and stayed in Hawaii. And I was only out for like a couple months. And I had just got laid off from my job. And a car cut in front of us, and we T-boned them. And I hit the dashboard and dislocated my shoulder. Not bad, walked away, but I was in a sling. But then I went to go apply for unemployment. And according to unemployment laws, you have to be willing, physically able to work. And the lady sitting across from me says, you're not eligible for unemployment. And I had to give up my apartment. I had a little room and some great guys, Hawaiian guys. And I felt bad. I said, I can't do this to you. I'm in recovery, and I don't have a job. So even if I was recovered, I can't do a job interview. I got a busted up shoulder. And so I said, all right. So I just couch surfed, and my sister visited me, and I'm real good. One of my first mentors, and you don't appreciate these people until they're not with you anymore. I was on a park bench. He showed up to me, and he gave me a book called As a Man Thinketh by R.B. Allen. And he pointed at me. He says, "You're exactly where you put yourself." Basically, like Jocko Willink talks about, absolute responsibility for it. It was my fault. Of course, when you're down and out, it's not. Oh, it's not my fault. It was fate. No, because if I get my shit together, I wouldn't have been in that place, and I'd made better decisions. So, my sister surprised me in Hawaii, and I said, "I need $100," and I flew back home. And I met my ex-wife at the time. Everything's great, and I'm walking in the mall, and I see a recruiting booth, and I'd already had missed my brothers. You know what I mean? I missed the whole thing, and there's a recruiter, and he had a poster, and it said helicopters on it. So, what do you guys do? He says, "Well, we're Army." So, you have helicopters in the Army? I didn't. It didn't dawn on me.
We got the most things that fly in the Army. Just to let you know.
What part of the Army? He goes, National Guard. I said, "What's that?" I'm probably like 2 years out, where I'm 2 years out of being there. I said, "Oh fuck, I'm gonna go fly with the Army." I mean, helicopters cool. When I signed up, they wouldn't even let me touch them. It was just weird. They're like, "No, you don't have the right MOS," which the Army is very, very specific about the MOSs. And in the Marine Corps, it's kind of like, because they're smaller units usually, like if you can learn someone else's job, it's like a big pat on the back. Great. You can stand in for me, or I can stand in for you. And in the Army, it's very MOS specific, I would say, very strict. Like, we don't want you playing on the helicopter. Yeah, you got that badge when you played in the Army, but this is different. And so I they said, "Oh," and they look at my ASVAB, says, "Oh, you think you're smart?" And so and I found out later this is what they do in the Army. If they find a smart guy, they said, "We're going to stick you in commo." Because in commo, no one understands it really.
No, I'll agree there.
Yeah, and I had a staff sergeant in there. He was great. So we're talking, this is around 97, 98. And he handed me a stack of books. He says, "Think you're smart? I'm just going to stick smarty pants with us." He said, "Well, here." He gave me a stack of books at drill. And he came back, and I remember the title of one of the books blew my mind because it was way above my head. Wave propagation, the rules of wave propagation. And then they talked about how you can stick an antenna in the ground, and you can actually bounce the radio waves off the land. Like, if you got to go a distance in those buildings and structures, you actually send the radio waves through the ground.
Whoa, I did not know that.
Yeah, I didn't either, and no one's ever done it. So, but I understood the basics of how it worked. I never went to MOS school because they don't have funding. The National Guard's weird. The funding comes from 2 different sources, so there's twice as many problems getting guys schools. Because I wanted to go to crew chief school, which was 13 months, which really in the Marine Corps we did it as OJT, on the job training. Yeah, and so they just assumed I was a combat. They actually thought I was a medic because one of my best friends still to this day was a medic, and I'd hang out with the medics all the time. Because in the Army, I was shocked that everyone has a truck. It's like, your truck is a truck. We walked in the Marine Corps, and it was kind of cool. And that was a really great experience. I had some great NCOs over there that were just amazing. One of the best commanders ever was captain, interviewing colonel. And that was like 97, 98. In 2000, I was married, had my first kid, and my mom passed away, and I left the Guard in Rhode Island. That was like 60 miles away. And then the war started. And so I signed up. Down the street, I saw a recruiter, poster for whatever National Guard, and the guy's name at the bottom was my recruiter in Rhode Island, which is 60 miles away. He had moved up to Mass. And I knew it. I pulled right in. That's the war started. I said, "Man, I want to deploy." I had my small business. I had a small sign company that I taught myself how to do after working construction. And he said, "All right, this unit right here is deploying in 9 months, 12 months." I said, "Great." And ended up doing 2 deployments with the Army, 05, 06 to Abu Ghraib. We closed Abu Ghraib. It was just the most lovely place in the whole world. And then I went over then in 9-10, and I worked. I was a gunner. Oh, this is a cool, funny story. Again, Mike's life. So I go to deploy in 05, and the commander gets the undeployable list. In the National Guard, it's really weird. They'll get a mission, and then kind of what's cool is they can pick who they want to go on. Whether they wanted to deploy back then, so they would pull people from all over the states, and you had some really high-speed guys going. One of my buddies was a ranger, and Another guy was a Gulf War vet, and there was actually a guy from my same Marine Corps unit in that unit that had left a few years before I did in the 80s. It was just the most bizarre thing. But they go to deploy, and the commander gets a list of undeployable. You're undeployable for medical, you're undeployable for this, and my name was on it. And the commander said, "Hey, here's your list." And he goes, "List? This guy can't be undeployable." They said, "Yeah, he's non-MOSQ'd. I never went to an Army school." But at the time, as being a Marine, and I knew 50 cals because I was an aerial gunner on things. In the National Guard, those things are like archived, the 50 cals. I took them out and repaired them all, and worked them all and boiled them up and everything. They wouldn't let anybody, because everyone would put the feed on wrong and screw them up. Back then, no war, so no one touched them. So I kind of like made a job for myself. And that's key, man. If you don't have, you look at, and I learned this when I do my business, a business consultant, you find the need and you fill it. That's a basic of business. So I said, well, they don't know how to do 50s. I'm going to show them. And there was a couple other guys that needed a refresher on it. And I had the manual out. I did it all by the book because it had been 8 years since I had touched one. And so anyway, it comes back to the commander and they said, well, what do you do? I said, he says, this guy's a heavy gun instructor. This guy does all our commo stuff. And we got nobody to fill the spot. And nobody wants to deploy. And this is, okay. So it went all the way up to a full bird. And a full bird is just, my MOS call says this soldier has, exemplary skills or whatever. We grant him this MOS. So they granted me the 31 uniform MOS. And out of all my love me wall, okay, that is my most pride that I have, is I made a job for myself. I proved that I worked hard, and I got an MOS. And
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
So how many years did you end up doing in the Army then?
Combined was 26.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah, it was. But I loved it. And I loved it. I loved the people. I think like Chief David Bald Eagles, World War II vet, and I served with his son, and this was coming from his son's mouth. He says, when you tell the stories, this is while the war was going on. He says, when time passes, the old man says, you'll end up talking about the people because they're amazing. They're amazing. I wrote a poem about, I got to walk the streets of Baghdad with heroes. It wasn't me. I had the honor to serve with them. These were young kids, man. I mean, I was in my 30s, and these kids are 18, 19 years old. And to this day, they still blow my mind on what amazing patriots they are and how well they treat their families, and how well they serve their communities still to this day. It blows my mind. And I was lucky to be able to participate in that. See, that's coming from a part of greatness. When I was at my lowest low, I was ungrateful. It's one of the first things I learned was to recover was, listen, you look back in your life, don't look at the dark stuff. Look at the good stuff. Look at how lucky you are. All of us have to serve in the greatest army. There hasn't been an army like this over the last 30 or 40 years. Oh, and you go back to World War II. Well, since World War II, since the Roman times. Romans, the only people that have ever done that is Romans, but we also weren't an aggressive force at any of this stuff. We were always a defensive force. So we served at a higher level than even the Romans did. And these are kids. Back then, they were bred to do that. We volunteered to do it.
Yeah, I was 18. So when I went to Iraq 2003, 4. So
yeah, what year did you go in?
Say again?
What year did you go in?
2003. I joined 2002, but went in 2003. So and then I was in Iraq 2003, 4. As soon as I left scout school at Fort Knox, I went to Fort Riley, my first duty station, to 270th Armor. It used to be called 70th Tank back in the day. And then when I was at in processing, they told me, don't even empty your bags. If you're going to 270th, you're going right over to Iraq. It's like, all right, cool. That's what I signed up for. So
now, being an old salt, man, coming from the 80s and 90s, right? The late 80s and early 90s, and I seen you guys cross in front of me. Absolutely brought tears to my eyes. I couldn't believe it. I thought that if the shit hits a fan, that people would run to the hills. You know what I mean? It would be like kind of like the middle of Vietnam when it got messy, where people were just like, whoa, I want no part of this. But patriot after patriot lined up, and these kids, 19 years old, was sitting next to me, and I said, why would you do this? I was thinking like that. I said, if I was them, I wouldn't have done this crap. This guy named Chapa, he sees this Chapa. I'll never remember this. I was getting better, and And I looked at him and I was teaching a class because I ended up being an instructor at a unit. And I said, and his brother's a Marine and Chap is in the Guard. And I said, why are you kids doing this? And he looked me in the eye and said, because you're tired. And I was like, wow, thank you. Another gift that if I had taken my own life, I never would have got that gift. One of the greatest gifts I ever got in my life. I'm here for you, brother. I'm here to take the wheel from you and continue on. And then I said, now it's time to retire. And I retired.
So after when you retired, how long did you prep for retirement? Like I know some people take like 2 years to prep and all this other stuff.
5 years. It took them 5 years to retirement.
Holy crap!
Well, let me just tell you about my second deployment. I got to do 52 combat missions as a lead gunner on 51 of the missions. Was selected, ended up being a PS. One was for a company level, and the next was a PSD team for the brigade commander, which was a 2-star out of Ohio. That's again picked for it. Like I'm no one special. I'm a regular guy, but someone said the guy's on the ball. We're gonna take him over here. And I got to the team. They're now all good friends of mine. And the guys were going on leave, so we would turn it down because we were turning down Iraq, you know, in 2009 and 10. And the cocky as I was, he goes, "Hey, old man, what makes you think you can come to my team and just be a gunner? Like it's all cool like that, Howie." I says, "Because I truly believed it, and I was. I said I am the best damn gunner in this country right now." I says, "Because I got skills, and I've been doing this for friggin' 15 years." He said, "Okay." And the next time, because I jumped out of the turret and started yelling at people again, fill in the slot, fill in the need. I spoke in Arabic to the fucking people that were in the traffic jam. I yelled at them, you know, all swear words in Arabic. Get out of the way, stop. You know, because you know it's weird. Their mentalities. They don't like thing. You see a traffic jam in America, they stop. With them, they just try to get around everything. It's really crazy.
Yeah, no kidding. I actually miss being a gunner. I think that was my favorite position out of all of them. 2005-06, I was a gunner in Iraq, and I think that's probably my best time sitting on top of a Humvee, just sitting there, fucking cruising around.
I felt like a god, like a Roman
yeah.
god.
Yeah,
I have bolts that I can strike down and destroy people with if they hurt my friends. It's a pretty powerful thing.
I did. Trust me, I did. Not sometimes not so good.
Yeah, and most of that's good. Some of it's bad. But you said the transition is what happened is I had well, now I can look back on it. I had a full mental breakdown in 2012. I was estranged from my wife. The kids were afraid of me. That's what I say. And then I was like, all that shit was underneath. And I said, oh, if I retire, then I'll get the help I need, even though I didn't know what it was. I didn't quite understand if it was PTSD or what it was. But it was like an iceberg. I kept it all into the water on top. And I started to go to counseling. And my ex-wife at the time asked for a divorce. Sick of all that stuff that stereotypically the vets do, drinking too much, not being home and taking off, and chasing women, and she got sick of it. I don't blame her. And I also realized what I was doing to my kids, and then I decided to help. But then I had a nervous breakdown. My whole life collapsed around me.
So, what did you seek for your mental breakdown? Did you seek any help or anything?
Oh, absolutely. My community was huge. It was like a 3-pronged attack. There was a guy, his name was Bill Moore, and he was part of a nonprofit. And I worked consulting / as a production manager at a sign company in the city. And there was a guy from a nonprofit who helped transition vets because I didn't need help. He saw me deteriorate like immediately. He said, Mike, we got to get you some services. I know what to do. And then he's got an organization. I want to plug as much as I can. It's Project New Hope. If you live anywhere in the Northeast and even outside the Northeast, they have retreat weekends. And I went to one of his retreat weekends, and I started to understand when they started describing, and I was going to the VA too, they were describing PTSD to me. But when I actually came clean and said, hey, it was 2012 Thanksgiving Day, I said, the weekend after Thanksgiving, I said, hey, as from my ex-wife and my sister, I said, I'm suicidal. I don't want to live. I was on scheduled deployment to go back to Afghanistan with a lot of guys from my old team. And I was going to step on a grenade or get myself killed because I wanted to kill myself. But I didn't want my kids to think I was a coward. So I planned it all out. And I called my own intervention. They didn't believe me. They said, you're just faking it because you're getting a divorce. but that was their perspective. Because the PTSD, I masked the PTSD with being a jerk. Like, hey, we're going to go over here and do this family thing. Like, I ain't going. But that was it. And then I went over to what really struck me as a friend. I live across from a supermarket. I went to the supermarket and I had a panic, my first real big panic attack. And I realized, oh my God, I haven't been in the supermarket in 5 years. I just avoided it all and worked 80 hours a week and plowed snow and just kept busy trying to keep the demons at bay.
Yeah, I can definitely relate with that. That was, I mean, I did deploy to Afghanistan, and I did some stupid stuff trying to get killed just because it was that I thought of it as a non-coward way out. You know, I'd let the enemy take me, and it wasn't a lack of them trying in Afghanistan. We were under attack all the time, but they just sucked at shooting apparently. So, and
What,
other stuff.
yeah, but just to be clear, is because I felt that way doesn't mean I feel that way. I don't think it's cowardly at all. You know,
Yeah.
you got to make that choice, but I talked to them. It's not. If you feel that way, here's the trick with PTSD, and maybe you can relate to this, is it's a sneaky thing. It makes you believe that people don't give a shit about you. That's what I felt in my brain, and a lot of guys I talked to. Nobody cares about you. What's the difference if you're here or not?
And that is part of it too. That's the depression part of it is nobody actually you think nobody cares about you around you, when at that time actually I didn't have any kids just at that point, but I mean I got 6 kids now. But at that time I had no kids. I wasn't married anymore, divorced while I was in South Korea. Um, it was a good divorce, so thankfully. I'm glad we divorced. It was a bad relationship, but it's just like everything was like starting to cabal and everything. And yeah, I volunteered out from South Korea to find a unit that was deploying. 101st Airborne was deploying, and it's like I'm gonna go because they're gonna go somewhere dangerous. So, and we went somewhere, where Cop Keating and OP Barrialai and Battle for One out, that same area up there, and we're there for the whole year. And they tried to put a shit in several times, and it wasn't a lack of them trying to kill us. They just weren't very good at it. But we were also very lucky, and I really think that was part of it. Someone was clearly watching over us because we had an RPG punch through an MATV and nobody died. Like it punched through and blew up inside the MATV and nobody died. I don't know how that happened, but somebody was clearly looking after us. I mean, it wasn't just that one, but we had several occasions of.
Yeah, that's probably one. Yeah, and that's one of the most stories you hear what guys say is, I was at Abu Ghraib when we were hand in hand with the prisoners, and the prisoners thought God was looking over us because there were so many incidents. We got bombed in 5 months 220 times, and nobody got hurt. Because there were actually decent people that walked up there. They go, "Did any of you sold Mister? Any of you guys get hurt?" No, no one got hurt. They're like, "Oh, inshallah, such as God or whatever it was," and thank Allah that. Yeah, and you actually believe. I mean, I'm convinced of it. There's something like I was like a Christian, like a practicing Christian at the time, and I said that I didn't say directly it was that God or anything, but there was something out there. I really there's always suspicion when you have faith in anything, but I truly learned that day that there was spirits of Abu Ghraib protecting us, and a lot of soldiers talk about that, or Marines and military guys, and I think that's a important part of recovery is reconnecting with whatever you think that is, because it was amazing. I could tell you incident, and you probably too, incident after incident. That guy. And
well, I mean, we did lose some at that one, but the amount we should have lost compared to what we didn't or what we did is just like, oh my God, it's like because my first mission in Afghanistan, we were running out of a village. We were taking fire from a mountaintop that we couldn't see, and bullets pinging all around us. Nobody got hit. It's like it's like that was our first mission in Afghanistan in 2010, 11, and it's like, like we didn't have a choice. Like you don't know where they're at. They're just throwing fire or bullets at you. They're pinging around you, so we just bound backwards, and it's just like there's nothing else you can do. You can't just sit there and try to fight them.
You're like, no, nobody.
Yeah. I know. We're sitting there running out, and I'm like, man, this is tiring. And I'm hearing ting ting all around me. It's like, fuck, please don't hit me. And we did a call for fire mission, and the call for fire mission my sister did. We didn't know, so we're just guessing. Ended up being 500 meters off, which is half a click, and somehow it landed on the people shooting at us, just magically. And all of a sudden the fire stopped, and we still got out of there. Of course, we didn't know if they were gonna combat, or there's more, but it's like, and in Afghanistan it's different than Iraq, because Afghanistan, they have a whole military structure, the Taliban do, where they have commanders and, you know, all the way down to the plebes. And when they do a BDA, battle damage assessment, at the end of each battle, and we could chime in on that. So that's how we knew they died. Well, when that person or the group doesn't chime in anymore and check in, we know they're dead. So that's how we figured out that we actually got them or not. So, and that's how it was. When they did a BDA, they didn't
Yeah.
respond anymore, and they would try over and over and over again. And then, of course, we get further traffic down the road about, hey, such and such died. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy. But so what is it? What do you do now exactly? I know after you got out, and
Well, yeah, let's go because I think it's important because everything builds on it. So I called for my own intervention and I knew there was something was wrong. I started going to the doc, and one of my best friends, my neighbor, and my Army mentor that went on both deployments with me set me up on the team. It was all the success I attribute to him. He was a sergeant and my neighbor and a community leader, veterans. He killed himself.
mm,
And this guy was the toughest guy I've ever met in my life, tougher than any Marine I ever met. I never saw the guy eat. I never saw the guy drink water. All he would walk around was with a cigarette in his hand and a cup of coffee. His name was Mike Scalacci, committed suicide. He did it at the Armory. He was working full time with the Guard at the time. And I found out that's when everything started to unwind. So I decided to go public because I
okay,
knew if, and my mentor, the toughest guy I've met in my life, took his own life. I said, I'm not the only one suffering. And then I didn't feel alone anymore. And so I went to them and like publicly, I said, hey, Commander, I need to talk to my guys. And I call a lot of them. I said, man, I'm checking out. And then they put in my paperwork to retire me. But because my records were scattered all over the place, it took them 5 years to retire me. Because you go and look at the paperwork. So your retirement package for an MEB, was a medical evaluation board for retirement, and you're not is usually,
yeah,
about an inch thick because you got all your records in there. Mine was almost 5 inches thick. So what that leads to what I'm doing is from about 2012, as I was recovering, I knew that once I had a great counselor. I went to the vet center, but the guy Bill Moore took me to the vet center, and I had gone to the counseling at the VA with all these groups, or regular groups, and I was, no man, I could be around combat vets. And then he said the vet center does just combat vets, which I highly recommend for any combat veteran. It's a little bit different perspective, but everyone is a combat veteran. And I had a counselor that told me that my mind was lying to me. That it was actually worth it. That I was actually an amazing person. And another line that she told me was, I said, I want to crush this demon, that this person that I became that's so angry and can destroy anything. She says, no, Mike, you just got to learn to control them. Because someday you're going to need them again. I was like, wow, just a different way of looking at it. And then what it is, I kind of documented everything I did. I got on my motorcycle and I rode for about up to South Dakota. I went on a reservation. I was so desperate to put my life back together that I tried everything. Tambourine circles, everything, acupuncture. I tried it all. And I kind of got stuck on, and I read some books too. I kind of got stuck on a meditation. If I was to say anything, meditation is what calmed my mind down so I could relax and I could breathe and I could heal. And I documented everything because I knew I would be, the Marines transformed me, the Army transformed me. And I said, I'm going through another transition in my life. I'm going to be transformed again. Who will I become? I don't know, but he's going to be amazing. He's going to use all this pain, suffering, and knowledge that I've learned through my whole life. And I'm going to become a different person. But I get to choose who they are. I'm not dictated by any else external things. And then I ran into another thing is I couldn't work anymore. I had the tremors, the PTSD tremors, and I couldn't work my job anymore. And so I was unemployed. I had no VA comp. I had nothing for 2 years. So I lost everything financially. House went up for foreclosure, auction, and I was pretty much homeless again. And luckily, I got a great community. One of the guys said, hey, I'm thinking about going and live over here. You can come and live in the basement in the little studio off that house. It was on 34 acres. And that was great. and it was a good buddy of mine, and he knew I was healing. Still to this day, he looks after me. I'm like he's 30 something and I'm 53, but he looks after me. He's a real good. He's my workout partner now because we're now rebuilding ourselves financially and rebuilding our bodies. Because my body's pretty much like yours is too, but it's destroyed. You guys jumped out of planes, which I think is insane.
Helicopters.
Yeah,
Helicopters.
I jumped around like a maniac, and I used to do long distance running too. So,
ouch.
But doing the notes, I went around the country on my motorcycle and I interviewed every vet that I could and visited some old friends from the Marine Corps. And I said, this is what's happening to me. And I listened to what they wanted. And I took a business approach to veteran because there was a lot of people that tried to help me and organizations, but I said, this is way off base. It just something didn't feel right. Something clicked. Man, this is a great thing. And I started collaborating with a lot of the nonprofits because they didn't talk to each other.
Yeah, they really did.
Yeah, there's a note. I noted that in. And then I asked the veterans, what do you do? And they said, what do you need? See, that's the thing in business. You find a fill, you find a hole and you fill it. It's in the military too. So what I found out was there was a great disconnect between the person that needs services and the services that are provided. Nonprofits in the VA don't advertise. So how is a vet supposed to know? So before it was even an organization, I would go around and say, bro, what do you need? I need a hug. I hop on my bike and go 3,000 miles to his house, pull up and go, mother, you're here? I said, yeah, you matter to me. I said, I've already buried another buddy of mine ended up killing himself too. The ranger that I do, one of the toughest guys I ever met in my life, took his life, OD. And I said, yeah, because you matter to me, because I'm tired of going to funerals. I said, there's no reason for it. And knock on wood, in my group, you end up having a group of about 600, most of us do, military. We haven't had, we've only had one suicide in 10 years. When you see some of these units, especially these high speed units, the 50% suicide rate, some of those, with attempts and successes. I mean, it's pretty high. So there's a big disconnect there. And I took that note and I just kept taking on notes. That's what they needed. And then I found out that it basically comes down. Did you get my transition guide yet? Did I send it to you?
No, I don't think you sent it to me yet.
Okay, so this
you might have.
Let's see if this stays. Am I still on there?
Yep.
Okay. So what it is, I took notes and I took like kind of that approach to it, and I came up with these basically six areas and I've been doing it I've been doing this about 6 years now, and I've had the guide written down what I did. Anyways, a guy named David Belchek, he said, Mike, you helping all these vets? I said, yeah. And he says, well, you need to start a nonprofit and you need to write down what you did. So I started to write down the steps that I go through. And he re-inspired me. And so it kind of comes down to like this. Let me get my notes up here. Yeah, and I can go into each one in depth, do a whole, like I'm going to do classes on each one of those. They're coming out probably this winter. When next winter coming around, I'm going to have actually classes, YouTube videos you can sign up for. So it basically comes down to is the first thing is you have to learn what self-care is. Yep. Okay. And there's a lot of misnomers of really what, if you ask a random person or a random vet, especially what is self-care, they go, oh, I don't know. They're never taught. Educating yourself. You got to learn if you have a condition, whether it's ALS or you have PTSD, whatever, you need to study it like it's an MLS school. You really need to understand it. And like, even so down as what PTSD is, I learned how the brain functions differently, and it helped me to understand how it works. The third is as a civilian out of the military, whether you have PTSD or not, is there's really no mentors for veterans. So that's the other part of connecting nonprofits together. Mentorship and education are the keys to what vetunite.org does. Mentorship is you got to hook with another veteran or anyone with any task. You find someone that's accomplished the task, and then you work with them, like you guys are doing with the PR. And you're lucky you have this person who's very generous, and they're going to give you all their time. And there's people out there that will do that. There's no one like that for veterans. That's why our model is unique. The other thing, too, is I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to step on any other nonprofits' toes. I want to work hand in hand with them. So if you've got a program and you're dealing with vets, you're doing equine therapy, you're doing this or that, I want to be able to say, okay, you can use my modules and plug them in to help your vets if they're struggling, or even if they just do it. Okay, that's number third is mentorship. The fourth is peer support. You have to be around like-minded people. A lot of vets get isolated. They might be in the community, there's a few vets, but you need a vet that understands exactly what you have. If you have PTSD or you've got ALS, you need a vet with the what you're dealing with, and also to you and that vet, at least one. The more, the better, because the civilian world, unless they're really patriotic, they don't really have the same mindset that we do, because we've provided them with a first-class society. It's really difficult. They're separated from a lot of the stuff that we've experienced, which has made us actually better and think differently. No matter what political spectrum you are, we know that there are bad people in the world. There's one example. Bad people in this world, and there's nothing you can do to those people but destroy them. That's just one example. And a lot of civilians go, "Oh my God, we just peace, love, and happiness." And I say, "Yeah, well, that's great in utopia, but that ain't the real world. 80% of the people on the world are worrying at that day. You're worrying about what flavor of coffee you're getting at Starbucks, and they're worrying about finding food. You know what I mean? Surviving for that month, and that just changes you. And it's not a bad thing. It's great perspective. So that's one thing. And the step 5 is service to others. There is no way for you to grow and become and transform into who you're supposed to be if you don't give back to other people. It's in our human nature to do that. And it actually, what I call it is it's fuel for your soul. You were in a society in a community that they were actually giving all the time. Our job was to protect people. Everyone goes, "Oh, how many people do you know, and how many guys you beat up?" And they want all these things out of a video game or a movie, and then there's always, "Did you ever kill anybody?" And I just look at them now, and I'm so grateful. I just said, I saved a lot of lives, whether it was the guy next to me or the civilians or whatever. Even in our rules of engagement, life, limb, or eyesight, or rape, you were intervening. You could take action against that other perpetrator. So our rules of engagement there were like protect civilians. That's our job. We're trying to protect the whole country. It's not this colonization.
All right, and go ahead.
Yeah, and the last, step 6 is to develop a new purpose. So I had read enough books prior to whatever was happening to me. Kind of like I was fortunate enough to know that I was transitioning to a different person. But I realized that I didn't really have a purpose for your life. See, the definition of success is a progressive realization of a worthwhile goal. So the goal that you're in the military is to protect people, okay? And you train for it constantly. So you're meeting the definition of success. And that gives you happiness and joy you get from that. When a lot of guys, when they get into the civilian world, is that part of theirs is gone. You're severed from that whole community and that society. So what you have to do is get in the process of developing a whole new purpose for yourself. It might be the best freaking dad in the whole world, or start a PR company, or whatever it is you got to do the grind, the day-to-day stuff will work, but you got to develop a purpose, because we are the most highly trained people to ever exist on this planet, okay? And we have gifts to offer to people, and some of it will be monetary back to us. So let's develop a purpose. My new purpose is to teach people what I've learned and change the way that we deal with transitioning veterans. And that's pretty much it. Empowering them.
And how can people get a hold of you, like your social media profiles and any of your handlers or your website, anything like that?
I'll give you the Facebook is the key one for me. It's Mike Damon. If you do Godfather 20, I got the nickname of the Godfather, which is a great story on another time. Godfather 20 on Facebook is the best. If you don't have Facebook, you can ask your kids. Ask the kids to do it. I have a link to my link tree if that's what you want to do. But I'm pretty much on all the platforms, TikTok and everything like that.
Okay.
So just Mike Damon. Go ahead.
You got it. And so this wraps up another episode of the Swandingo Files with my guest, Mike Damon. He is the new Godfather. Don't worry about the movie. He's better than the movie was. I promise you. So